Okay, guys, this morning we're going to talk about the differences between cell types. All right, now remember, let's go back to our basics that the basic unit of life is a cell, okay? Now, the thing about science is that we like to categorize things. And so when we talk about cells, we actually have two big types of cells. We can either have prokaryote cells, or we can have eukaryote cells. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the difference between the two and, of course, similarities. So let's talk about prokaryotes first. So prokaryote. Let's do word roots. Pro means before, and karyon, well, technically means no nut, but that doesn't really make sense to us because before they figured out what the nut was, the nut is actually our nucleus. And so prokaryotes, these are a no nucleus. EUS, a no nucleus cell type. And remember, the nucleus, what it does, the nucleus is quote unquote, in the simplest terms, this is our brain. So our prokaryote cells, these are cells that have no brain. And if I wanted to say that, hey, my cells have no brain, that means I would classify them as very, very simple cells, right? Because they don't have that command center. Now, other things about prokaryotes, that these are going to be my bacteria. Okay, so bacteria are prokaryotes. And you guys know that bacteria are all around us, right? And so if I said, hey guys, like if you look at your arm, can you see the bacteria on it? Or if you look at a surface around you, can you see the bacteria? No, you can't. So that means our bacteria, these are going to be very small, like smaller than even other cells. And since they're so small, they actually are only one cell big. One cell big. And there's a fancy word for being one cell big. This is called unicellular, because uni means one, and then so this is a one-celled thing. Now, a couple other things about my prokaryotes besides that they're super simple and that they're bacteria and they're one cell big. We know that all cells have to have DNA. That's something that we've already discussed. But their DNA looks different from ours. So their DNA is actually circular. So whenever we draw our DNA, remember we always draw it kind of like a double helix, something like that. That's not what theirs looks like. Theirs actually goes in a circle like that, which is kind of important when we start talking about evolutionary relationships, but we'll cover that another day. So their DNA is circular. That's really important to note. Also, these guys are going to divide by binary fission, which sounds kind of odd, but it's actually a pretty easy process. Like if this was my bacteria cell, let's just take it as simplest as we can. So here's my bacteria cell. Look how happy he is. And then what he's going to do is that he's going to get larger. But you guys know that if something gets larger, it starts to get a little uncomfortable. Think about, your clothes. If you guys were to gain 50 pounds, then those clothes don't feel as comfortable as they used to. Well, that cell was happy right here at this size. When he gets too big, then he becomes uncomfortable. So then my cell will start to split, and then I'll end up with two cells. And that's in the most simplistic thing possible. That's what binary fission is just having one cell and then ending with two with not a lot of stuff in the middle. There you go. Okay, so now let's talk about my eukaryote cells. Let's get a good color here. That's a good color. So let's talk about, no, actually, let's not do that. Let's draw a prokaryote first. I think that's going to be better. Okay, so here's my prokaryote cell. Not all of them look like this. Some of them are circle, but if you were to see pictures in a textbook, this is really what it would look like. Now, let's start with what this guy has first. We know what the blue line is. The blue line is the cell membrane, because remember, all cells have to have a cell membrane. It defines the cell and it lets things in and out. Now, a lot of prokaryotes have another structure on the outside. What do you think this one is? This is going to be my cell wall. But it makes sense because cell wall, guess what he does? Like if I have a wall around a city, what do those walls do? They serve as protection. Because remember, these cells are only one cell big. And so they have to, they have to fight with the elements around them. So that cell wall, tries to keep as much out and to keep their cell safe as much as possible. All right, so there's that. Now, these are in no nucleus, so I don't get to have one. Here's my circular DNA. And then my DNA, though, it is found in the nucleoid, oops, let's spell that again. Nucleoid region. So they don't have a nucleus, but it's going to be found in the center where you would find a nucleus. All right, what other structures do they have? Oh, okay, well, something that everybody has to have. What do you think the little dots are? These little dots, these are going to be my ribosomes. And remember, ribosomes make proteins. And what do proteins do for us? These are going to make the physical organism. And so I have to have proteins because I have a physical thing right here in front of me. Let's see here, what else? So they have a cell membrane, they have DNA, they have ribosomes. Okay, they still have all of this stuff out here. So they still have cytosol. And really, that's about all they have. Oh, okay. Now hold on. I say that and then I'm not done. Some bacteria have this, whoops. No, I click the eraser. Some bacteria have this awesome little structure right here, like a tail. This tail is called the flagella. But what do you think that's going to help him do? Like, think of a sperm cell, right? Like sperm cells, they look like this. What does that do? Because that's the same thing. This is going to be your flagella. What's he do? Okay, he helps with movement. Because remember, these are one-celled organisms living in their environment. Sometimes they have to move. And so some of our bacteria cells will have a flagella on them. And then other ones, not a whole lot of them, but some of them are going to have these tiny little hairs covering them. Those are called cilia. And what they do, they move back and forth, and so they kind of act like a broom. They keep the cell free of debris. All right, that's all the stuff about prokaryotes. So now let's talk about eukaryote cells. Eukaryote. All right, so let's talk about word roots. U means do, and karyon still means nut, which we know now is the nucleus. And so my eukaryotes, they do have a nucleus, which means they do have a brain of a cell. And really the brain, this is just where my DNA is kept. And besides having a nucleus, and we're going to talk more about them in another video, but they also do have membrane-bound organelles. All right, and these organelles, these are just structures inside the cell. Really what it does is it compartmentalizes things inside your cell, so that way whatever that job is for the cell, it gets done faster. So it gets done faster. And when you think about compartmentalization, it's not really a hard concept. Like if I were to give you guys 5 different papers and I say, hey, you have to get these done, are you going to get them done faster if you concentrate on one paper at a time, or are you going to get them done faster if you try to do all 5 at the same time? You're going to get them done faster when you do one at a time, right? That's just what compartmentalization is. Like if you start dividing up the work, then it gets done a lot faster. So they do have membrane-bound organelles. The organisms that we find in eukaryotes, I always say this, you do. And so since you do, this is my animals, because you guys know, whoops, let's spell animals, right? Because you guys know that you're an animal. So you do plants and fungi. Okay, say, and what's the one thing about all of these? Like, can I see an animal? Yes. Can I see a plant? Yes. Can I see a fungi or a mushroom? Yes. Which means they have to be made of more than one cell. That means these guys are multicellular, okay? Say they're made of one or more cells. Now, do we all start out as a single cell? Yes, but we move on from that. And then to note about our DNA, say our DNA is not circular, it's linear. That's where we get, whoa, that wasn't very good. That's where we get this double helix. That's where we get the double helix structure. What else did we cover? Oh, okay. And then these cute little guys, these are going to divide by mitosis. And mitosis, by definition, is the division of my nucleus. So it's like that's why prokaryotes can't do mitosis, because they don't have a nucleus. But eukaryotes do have a nucleus, so they get to divide by mitosis. Also, just to note, we said that the prokaryotes were small, so these are going to be larger cells. I mean, if you guys look down at your arm, can you see an individual cell? No, you can't, but they are larger than prokaryotes. And so if we wanted to draw this guy, so what do we draw? You know that we draw a circle. There you go. So this is going to be my cell membrane. Remember, all cells have to have a cell membrane because it defines my cell. I'm going to have a nucleus because that's what you do. And then inside my nucleus is my DNA. I'm still going to have ribosomes because this is a living organism. And we know ribosomes make proteins, just like we did last time, and proteins are going to make the physical organism. And so every cell has to have those. And then we talked about eukaryotes having membrane-bound organelles. And this is where it starts to get a little funky, and we'll talk more about it. But when we start looking at animal cells, especially when we talk about our next video, they have all of these different structures in here. So there's a structure right there. Here's a structure right here. And then here's another structure, kind of looks like pancakes. And then I have another structure that's just kind of a circle, you know, with some stuff inside. I have another structure, you know, on this side that has a bunch of dots on it. And so all of those right there, see, we're not going to talk about specific names right now because that's another video, but these, as a collective, these are our organelles. Remember, organelles, these are going to do a specific job within the cell. And remember, we like things to be divided up because that means I get to do stuff a lot more quickly. Oh, and then last little bit, this of course is still going to have my cytosol. Okay, so let's talk about what these awesome little cells have in common. Okay, so what do these cells have in common? All right, well, let's think about the first thing. What do all cells have to have so they can be a defined space? They all have to have a cell membrane. Because remember, a cell membrane, this is going to define my cell, and it's going to let things in and out, right? Semi-permeable, all that fun stuff. The next thing that all cells have to have, because let's go back to our characteristics of life, all cells have to have some type of DNA, because remember, DNA is going to code for the organism. And it doesn't matter if our organism is one cell or it's a bunch of cells. You still have to have something that codes for it. And now that you have the information, you have to make a physical manifestation of that code. So that means all cells have to have ribosomes, because those ribosomes are going to take the DNA message, and then from that message, they're going to make a protein, and then that protein is going to give us, whoa, I don't want that word, so give us a physical organism or a physical characteristic. And then, of course, the last thing that they all have in common, that's going to be my cytosol. My cytosol, I always like to think of it like packing peanuts. You know, we've talked about, hey, if you guys have a package, like let's say you want to send a vase to an aunt in another state and you have to package it up. If you don't put packing peanuts or any type of packing material in there, there's a good chance that that vase is going to get broken. And if it's going to get broken on the way there, then why send it in the first place? So you have to have packing peanuts. Cytosol is a packing peanut because, look, that cell is going to live in an environment. So he's going to come in contact with stuff. He has to have packing peanuts. So that way all of these structures don't get damaged. And it's the same thing. Even though prokaryotes are really simple, I don't want my DNA damaged. I don't want my ribosomes damaged. So they sit in packing peanuts too. Now, one last thing. Let's talk about cell size. Say we talked about how eukaryotes are bigger than prokaryotes, but in all reality, these suckers are really tiny. So cell size, the entire idea is that I want my cells to be small, okay? I want my cells to be very, very small. Say the more small my cells are, so small cells are more efficient. All right, so small cells more efficient. Now, that's a pretty easy idea to understand, because let's say here's the cell. Okay, so this can be cell A, and then here's this cell. This is cell B. Regardless if you are a prokaryote, regardless if you're a prokaryote or eukaryote, you have to pass stuff through the middle of your cell because that's where your DNA is. And so if I look at this, and I have to get, this is something I need, right? This is something I need. And it has to get to the middle of my cell in order to be processed. You see how this one has a lot less distance to travel than this guy? And I don't mean how far away the star is, but from your cell membrane to the center, see how large that is compared to this guy? And so small cells, right? He's going to be able to get things in and out a lot more quickly. This one is going to take longer. And if you need a process or something to happen, you don't have time to wait on this. Maybe say this could be life or death for your cells. So I want to be able to have small cells. Small cells get things in and out really, really quickly. And then as far as that goes, this means my surface area to volume ratio is large. Okay, that's just a fact we need to know. Say we'll do some math problems in class to show that, but if you guys just can remember, I want my cells to be small, and the larger my surface area to volume ratio is, the smaller my cell gets. There you go. So everything about cells. Cells, my basic unit of life. I have two types. I have the prokaryote with no nucleus, really simple bacteria. And then I have my eukaryote cells, which are much more complex. I guess we could write that word on there. Say these are very, very complex cells, and their DNA is linear, divided by mitosis, and you can see they have a lot more going on inside. But these are the 4 things that your cells have in common, so you need to know those. And then we just be able to recognize that, hey, my cells have to be really, really small because that makes them more efficient. All right, I hope that helps.